Sienna's phone lit up in her lap, a live video call.
You
On the
don't
screen
have
was
to
a
earn
hospital bay,
kindness.
filmed from somewhere inside the ER. Then a text appeared under it. Smile, baby. I'm closer than you think.
You all right?
Is there someone I can call?
Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video. The more voices we reach, the louder these stories become. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where love finds us. Sienna Carlisle hit the hospital doors like they were the last thing standing between her and whatever was chasing her. Cold air from the automatic entrance licked over her bare shoulders. Her dress, cream satin, too tight in the hips, cut to flatter a body she'd learned to weaponize and apologize for at the same time, clung where it shouldn't, slid where it couldn't. One heel was gone. The other clicked once, then again, sharp and accusing against the tile as she tried to walk like nothing was wrong. Everything was wrong. Ma'am, look at me. A voice, female, calm. Sienna's eyes dragged up to the triage desk. A nurse with tired kindness in her face was already reaching for a pulse oximeter, the plastic clip poised like a question. I'm fine, Sienna lied automatically, the way she'd learned to say it at 16, at 22, at 30. Her fingers tightened around her clutch as if it could hold her together. I just tripped. The nurse's gaze skimmed Sienna's wrist, swollen and pink. Then the faint bruising under her collarbone that makeup hadn't fully erased. Then the slight tremor in her hands, so small Sienna hoped it looked like cold. What's your name? Sienna hesitated, not because she didn't know it, because her name had consequences. Her name could become a headline if the wrong person decided she deserved one. Sienna, she said at last. Sienna Carlisle. The nurse typed it in. Any chest pain? Sienna's mouth opened. Her chest wasn't pain. It was a tightness, a trapped breath, a weight that didn't know how to leave. She nodded anyway because explaining felt impossible. On a scale of 1 to 10. I don't know, Sienna snapped, then softened quickly, because being sharp never helped and always got remembered. I don't know. I need this to stop. The nurse clipped the monitor onto her finger. Numbers leapt up. The nurse's brows knit, then smoothed out again like she was folding worry into a neat square to keep it from spilling. Okay, she said gently. We're going to get you a bed. Sienna's throat tightened. A bed meant questions. Questions meant eyes. Eyes meant judgment. She'd been judged in expensive restaurants, in boardrooms, in elevators with mirrored walls where she could see herself being watched. Thick hips, soft belly, the kind of curves people wanted until they wanted to punish you for having them. She was used to that. But this was different. Here, she couldn't perform her way out of it. Here, she was just a woman in trouble. A curtain shifted to Sienna's right. Footsteps approached, measured, unhurried, like whoever was coming didn't believe in panic. She turned before she meant to. He was tall, handsome in a way that didn't look practiced. Clean lines, deep brown skin that made the fluorescent light seem less cruel, short cropped hair, and eyes that didn't dart. He wore navy scrubs, a badge clipped at his chest. Darius Miles, RN. And then, like the universe had decided she needed one more reason to feel exposed, his hands came into view. Steady, capable hands, veins faint beneath the skin, fingers that looked like they could catch someone before they fell. Sienna's stomach dropped. Handsome black nurse, young enough to be confident, old enough to be tired, strong enough to lift her, if she let him. And suddenly she wasn't in a hospital anymore. She was in a hallway with a locked door. A voice behind that door. A silence after. Her pulse hammered. The clip on her finger beeped faster. Darius stopped at a respectful distance, not crowding her space. His gaze flicked to the monitor, then back to her face, like he'd learned to read what machines couldn't. Hi, he said, voice low, controlled. I'm Darius. I'm going to help get you settled. Sienna's mouth went dry. Help. Settled. That sounded too much like being handled, like being contained. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm okay. I don't need... You don't have to be okay to be here, he said, not harsh, not soft, just true. It landed like a slap because she wasn't used to truth being offered without a price. The triage nurse stood. We've got chest tightness, possible fall injury, anxiety response. Vitals are up. Darius nodded once. Then he looked back at Sienna. Really looked, as if he was choosing to see her and not the story his brain could invent about her. You want a wheelchair? Or do you want to walk? He asked. Sienna blinked. It wasn't the question she expected. Not what happened to you? Not why are you dressed like that? Not who did this. Just choice. I can walk, she said quickly, pride flaring because it was the only thing she had left. Okay, he said. We'll go slow. He didn't touch her. He didn't even reach for her elbow. He simply stepped half a pace to the side, leaving room, letting her lead. That should have calmed her. Instead, it made her suspicious. She'd learned to expect judgment from men who looked at her body like it was a verdict. She'd learned to expect pity from people who couldn't imagine her pain belonging in a dress like this. And she'd learned, worst of all, to expect that kindness always came with a hook. They moved down the corridor. The ER swelled around them. A child crying somewhere behind a curtain, a stretcher rolling fast, the smell of antiseptic and coffee that had been burned into bitterness. Overhead, the lights buzzed faintly, like the building itself was tense. Sienna tried to keep her steps steady. Her ankles screamed, her wrist throbbed, her chest kept tightening, squeezing her breath into small, ugly pieces. Darius matched her pace without making a show of it. "You feeling dizzy?" he asked. "No," she lied. He didn't call her out. He didn't correct her. He just adjusted his position slightly, close enough that if she swayed he could catch her without grabbing. That was the thing about him. Everything he did felt intentional, like he'd built his calm out of experience. They reached an empty bay. Darius pulled the curtain closed halfway, not sealing her in, not leaving her exposed. Halfway. Another choice. "Go ahead and sit," he said, pointing to the bed. "I'm going to check your wrist and your ribs. Then we'll get you something for the pain and help you breathe easier." Sienna perched on the edge of the mattress like she didn't deserve to take up space. Her breath hitched. The room suddenly felt too small, like the air knew her secrets. Darius sanitized his hands. The sound, wet and brisk, made her flinch. His eyes softened, not in pity, but in recognition. "Hey," he said quietly, "I'm going to ask you something, and you can answer however you want." Sienna's throat tightened. "Okay. Are you safe?" The question snapped something inside her. Safe meant admitting she wasn't. Safe meant dragging the truth into light. Safe meant becoming the kind of woman people talked about like she was a lesson. Sienna swallowed hard. Her eyes burned. "I don't know." Darius nodded once, like that was a valid answer. Like confusion was allowed. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said. "Right now I'm going to check your injuries. I'll tell you before I touch you. If you want me to stop, you say stop." Consent. Another thing she wasn't used to hearing when she was scared. Sienna's lips parted. No sound came out. She just nodded, because it was all she could manage. Darius moved slowly. "I'm going to look at your wrist first. Is that okay?" Yes. He reached, gentle, and for a split second she was sure she'd flinch. Sure she'd pull back. Sure she'd prove every ugly assumption in her head. That he'd judge her, that he'd blame her, that he'd look at her like she was trouble in heels. But his touch was careful. Professional. Warm. And when his fingers found a tender spot and she winced, he didn't roll his eyes or sigh like she was dramatic. He just said, "I've got you." Sienna's breath broke. One tear slipped free despite her effort to hold it in. Darius glanced up, meeting her gaze without pressure. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. And then, before she could respond, a voice from outside the curtain called his name. Urgent. "Darius, we need you. Trauma coming in. 2 minutes." His jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on Sienna. He didn't leave her like she was nothing. "I have to step out," he said. "But I'm coming back. I'm not handing you off like a package. You understand?" Sienna nodded, gripping the edge of the sheet with her good hand. Darius hesitated, then added softly, "And Sienna, whatever you're afraid I'm thinking, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you tell the truth safely if you want to." He stepped out. The curtain fluttered. The ER noise rushed in. Sienna sat on the bed, shaking, staring at her bruised wrist like it belonged to someone else. While, deep in her clutch, her phone vibrated again with a message she hadn't opened. Because she already knew what it said. And she was terrified that when Darius came back, she wouldn't be able to hide it anymore. The curtain didn't block the noise. It only softened it. Like the hospital was trying to pretend chaos could be polite. Outside, someone shouted a countdown. Wheels squealed. A stretcher rattled past. The air shifted with that particular urgency that made even the fluorescent lights feel sharper. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed with her clutch in her lap, fingers locked around it hard enough to ache. Her wrist throbbed. Her ankle burned where the strap of her remaining heel had rubbed her raw. But none of that mattered compared to the buzzing in her palm. Her phone vibrated again. She didn't need to open it. She knew the rhythm now. 3 quick pulses, then one longer, like a metronome for fear. She stared at the screen anyway. The notification glowed through the crack of her clutch. "Where are you?" Another buzz. "Don't play with me, Sienna." She swallowed so hard her throat clicked. Her instinct was to disappear, to turn herself into air, to become invisible the way she'd learned to be invisible when a man's mood went dark and the room got too small. But she couldn't disappear in a hospital bed. She couldn't hide in a place built for people to be found. The curtain shifted slightly as bodies brushed past on the other side. Sienna's muscles locked. What if he comes here? What if he's already outside? What if he's watching the doors the way he always does, like he owns the world and her with it? Her phone buzzed again, louder now because the whole room had gone silent inside her head. "I see your location." Sienna's blood went cold. She lifted the phone with her good hand, thumb hovering over the message like it weighed 100 pounds. Her chest tightened, the same crushing pressure that had brought her in here, only now it felt like it had teeth. No. She tried to inhale, couldn't. Tried again, got a jagged sip of air that burned. The monitor beside her bed began to beep faster. A panic attack, she thought distantly, like naming it might make it behave, like saying the word could put a leash on it. But panic didn't care about names. Panic cared about power. Sienna's vision tunneled. The curtain, the bed rails, the pale walls, everything narrowed until the only thing that existed was her phone and the sense of being hunted. She pressed her thumb into the soft spot beneath her collarbone, a grounding trick she'd taught herself years ago when she'd realized no one was coming to save her. It didn't work tonight. Her phone buzzed again. Open the door. She hadn't told him she was at the hospital, which meant he didn't need her to tell him anything. Sienna's breath cracked. The curtain snapped open halfway. She flinched so hard her shoulders screamed. But it wasn't him. It was Darius. Navy scrubs, calm eyes, that steady posture that made it look like the world could fall apart and he'd still know where to put his hands. He stopped the second he saw her face. He didn't ask what happened. Not first. He looked at the monitor, the rapid numbers, the frantic beeping. Then he looked back at her, like the machine was only part of the truth. "Sienna," he said softly, like he was stepping into a room with an injured animal. "Hey, you're here. I'm here." She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Darius's gaze flicked to her phone. Not invasive, not nosy, just aware. "Can I come closer?" he asked. The question hit her like a kindness she didn't know how to hold. She nodded, barely. He stepped in, slow and deliberate. He didn't grab the phone. He didn't reach for her wrist. He just lowered his voice as if the air itself might be listening. "Follow my voice," he said. "Nothing else for a second. Just me." Sienna's eyes stung. She hated that she was crying. She hated that she was shaking. She hated most of all that she'd been afraid of him, afraid he'd look at her like she deserved this. Darius placed a chair beside the bed and sat, not towering, not looming, just level with her. His hands stayed visible in his lap. Open. Empty. "Okay," he said. "We're going to borrow your body back from your fear. You ready?" She shook her head. "That's okay," he said. "We'll do it anyway, and you can be scared while we do it." Something in her chest loosened a millimeter. Darius nodded toward the space between them. "Look at my hand," he said, lifting it slowly like he was showing her something precious. "Not to touch you, just to give your brain something simple." Sienna forced her eyes onto his hand. "Good," he said. "Now breathe in. Count to 4. She tried. It came in broken. "Perfect," he said immediately, like broken still counted. "Now out, slow, longer than the inhale." The monitor kept beeping, but the sound started to fade behind his voice. "In," he guided. "Out." Her lungs began to remember how to be lungs. The room sharpened back into shape. Her phone buzzed again. Sienna's eyes jerked downward despite herself. Darius didn't snap at her, didn't tell her to stop. He simply leaned a little closer, careful. "Is someone threatening you?" he asked. Sienna's mouth trembled. "Aye," she swallowed. He knows where I am." Darius's jaw tightened, a flash of anger. He didn't aim at her. It passed as quickly as it came, tucked back into control. Okay, he said, steady. We can handle that. Sienna let out a small, ugly sound. No, she whispered. You don't understand. He's the kind of man people believe. Darius's eyes held hers. And you're the kind of woman who deserves to be safe, he said. Both can be true, but only one matters in this room. Sienna's throat collapsed. A sob pushed out of her before she could stop it. I didn't want you to see me like this, she choked. Darius nodded once. I know, he said, but I'm glad you came anyway. Her shame rose hot. I thought. She stopped, horrified by the truth even as it pressed against her teeth. I thought you would judge me. Darius didn't blink. Because I'm a black man? He asked quietly. Sienna's face burned. She couldn't look away, couldn't lie. She gave the smallest nod, like confession was all she had left. The silence that followed felt like standing on a cliff edge. Darius exhaled slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler, not because she deserved softness, because he chose it. I don't have to pretend that doesn't sting, he said, but I'm not here to punish you with my pain. I'm here to keep you alive. Sienna's tears spilled faster. I'm sorry, she whispered, words cracking. I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize how deep it was until I saw your face, and my first thought was that you'd look at me and decide I deserved this. Darius's eyes softened in a way that didn't let her off the hook, but didn't shove her deeper into it either. Fear makes liars out of all of us, he said, but it also shows us where we need to grow. Sienna nodded desperately, wiping at her cheeks with the back of her hand like she could erase everything she'd ever been. Darius glanced at the phone again. May I ask, does he track you through location sharing? An app? A family plan? Sienna's breath hitched. He made me. She shut her eyes. He said it was for safety. Darius's expression didn't change, but his voice got even calmer, like he'd stepped into a script he knew too well. Okay, he said, here's what we're going to do. If you want, I can call hospital security. We can keep your name off the visible board. We can make sure no one gets back to this bay without permission. And I can bring in our social worker, someone trained to help with this part. Sienna stared at him. You'd do that? I'm doing it, he corrected. If you say yes. Her phone buzzed again like a clock ticking down. Sienna's hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. Darius waited, didn't rush her, didn't decide for her. The choice sat between them like a door. Sienna swallowed, then whispered, yes. Darius stood immediately, smooth and certain, but before he turned away he looked at her again. You're not alone, he said. Not tonight. He stepped out and spoke to someone beyond the curtain, low, quick, professional. Sienna sat frozen, listening to the hospital swallow his words. Then, through the thin curtain, she heard the unmistakable sound of another voice. Male, sharp, too confident in a place that wasn't his. I'm looking for Sienna Carlyle, the voice said. She's my fiancée. Sienna's blood turned to ice, and from the other side of the curtain Darius answered, steady as steel. No, he said, you're not. The voice outside the curtain didn't belong in a hospital. It was too sure of itself, too polished, like it expected doors to open just because it spoke. Sienna's whole body went rigid, every muscle pulling tight as if the air had turned into wire. I'm looking for Sienna Carlyle, the man said again, louder this time. She's my fiancée. She's probably confused. She gets anxious. I need to see her. Sienna's stomach flipped. The way he said confused made her feel small, childish, unreliable. He was already laying the story down like a rug he planned to drag her across. Through the thin opening of the curtain, she could see Darius's silhouette, broad shoulders blocking the gap like a wall that breathed. No, Darius said, calm as a locked door. There was a pause. Then a sharp laugh, the kind that pretends something is funny when it's really a threat. Excuse me? The man snapped. Who are you? A nurse, Darius answered, still level. And you're not authorized to be back here. You don't get to decide that, the man said. I do. Sienna's phone buzzed in her lap like a living thing. Come out now. Her fingers cramped around it. The screen blurred as tears filled her eyes again, hot and humiliating. She pressed her thumb into her palm, grounding. Nothing. Darius's voice dropped lower, controlled. Sir, step away from the curtain. Or what? The man challenged. You'll tackle me? Sienna could hear him smiling in his own voice. That was the part that always came first, the performance of charm, the dare, the invitation for someone to overreact so he could say, see? Look how crazy you made them. Darius didn't bite. Or security will escort you out, he said simply. The man scoffed. Security for a fiancée? Do you hear yourself? She's a patient, Darius cut in, and his tone changed, not louder, just heavier. And you're escalating. Sienna's chest squeezed again. Her mind flashed to a familiar scene, a hand on a doorknob, his voice sweetening when someone else was around, his eyes turning flat the moment they were alone. She wanted to hide. She wanted to vanish into the mattress. She wanted to be anywhere but inside her own life. Then she heard footsteps, fast, purposeful. A walkie crackled. A different voice, older, steady. "Sir," someone said, "step back." Sienna's breath caught. The curtain opened wider. Not all the way, just enough for her to see hospital security. A broad man with an earpiece and a stance that said he'd seen every kind of excuse. Behind him, a woman in a blazer held a badge wallet, her face calm but sharp. The fiancé turned his charm on like a light. "Finally," he said, spreading his hands. "Thank you. This nurse is refusing to let me see my fiancée. She's frightened. She had too much to drink at a work function and fell. She gets dramatic, you know. I'm just trying to take her home." Sienna's throat burned. He'd already rewritten her pain into something convenient. The woman in the blazer didn't smile. "I'm Marin," she said, voice even. "Hospital social worker, and this is Damon with security. What's your name?" The fiancé hesitated a fraction, then offered it like it was an award. "Preston Hale." Sienna flinched. Hearing it out loud in this place made it feel poisonous. Marin nodded once, as if noting a detail on a form. "Mr. Hale, you're not allowed in the patient care area unless the patient consents. Do you have that consent?" "Of course I do," Preston said smoothly. "She's just upset. Let me talk to her." Darius stayed planted. "She said yes to security," he said. "That's consent, not yours." Preston's eyes flicked toward the curtain, searching for Sienna's shape behind it, like he could pull her out with his stare. "Sienna," he called, sweet as syrup. "Baby, come on, don't do this." Sienna's lungs shrank. Marin stepped closer. "Mr. Hale," she said, firmer now. "I'm going to ask you to lower your voice." Preston's smile tightened. "This is ridiculous. You're letting some nurse." "Last warning," Damon said, voice flat. For a second the charm fell away. Preston's face hardened, eyes cold and calculating. Sienna knew that look. She'd seen it on nights when apologies didn't matter, when her tears were treated like an inconvenience. And then, like flipping a coin, he returned to the performance. "Fine," he said, breathy with fake patience. "But you're making a mistake. She's not in her right mind. She's embarrassed. That's all." Marin turned slightly toward the curtain. "Sienna," she called softly, "you don't have to speak if you're not ready, but if you want him removed, say so." The room tilted. Sienna's entire life seemed to hang on one word. Removed meant admitting he was dangerous. Removed meant choosing herself. Removed meant stepping into a future she hadn't planned for, one without his money, his name, his protection, that always felt like a cage. Her phone buzzed again. A final message lit the screen. "If you do this, you'll regret it." Sienna stared at it, then at her bruised wrist, then at the half-open curtain where Darius stood like a boundary with a heartbeat. She remembered what he'd asked earlier. "Are you safe?" And for the first time in a long time, she let the truth rise all the way up without swallowing it back down. "No," she said, barely louder than a breath. Then again, stronger. "No." Darius's head turned slightly, like he'd heard her not just with his ears, but with his whole body. Marin's voice softened. "Do you want him to leave?" Sienna's lips trembled. Her heart punched at her ribs. The old fear tried to pull her back under. Then she saw Darius's hands again, open, still, not reaching for her, just ready if she fell. Not ownership, not control, choice. "Yes," Sienna said. "I want him gone." The silence that followed was brief but absolute, like the world had stopped to listen. Preston's voice sharpened. "Sienna, don't be stupid." Damon stepped forward. "That's it," he said. "Sir, you need to come with me." Preston jerked his arm away when Damon touched his elbow. "Don't put your hands on me." Darius didn't move, didn't escalate, just watched, calm and alert, making sure the situation didn't turn. Marin spoke quietly to Damon. "Call PD if he refuses." Preston's eyes flashed. He leaned toward the curtain, voice dropping into something low and venomous. "You think you'll be believed?" Sienna's knees went weak. Her stomach churned. Darius's voice cut through it, soft but unbreakable. "She already is." Damon guided Preston back. Preston kept talking, Threats disguised as concern, accusations disguised as love, until his voice faded down the hall and disappeared like a bad smell carried out on air. Sienna didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until it rushed out of her in a shaking exhale. The beeping on the monitor slowed, the room stayed. Darius turned back to her. "You did something very brave," he said, not smiling, not dramatizing it, just naming it. Sienna's eyes burned again. "I'm terrified," she admitted, voice breaking. "I know," Darius said, "and you're still here." Marin stepped into the bay, careful, respectful. "Sienna, I'm going to help you make a plan for tonight," she said. "We can disable location sharing. We can document what you told us. We can coordinate a safe ride. We can connect you with an advocate. You won't have to do it alone." Sienna nodded, overwhelmed. Darius pulled the curtain a little more closed, giving her privacy without trapping her. "I'll be right outside," he said, then hesitated. His gaze met hers. "And for what it's worth, thank you for telling me the truth earlier." Sienna's cheeks flushed. "About me being afraid you'd judge me?" Darius's eyes held steady. "Yeah," he said. "That took honesty. Now you get to keep going." She swallowed. "I don't want to be that person," she whispered. "The person who assumed." Darius nodded once. "Then don't stay her," he said. "Change." Marin set a clipboard on Sienna's lap, gentle. "We'll start with the practical," she said. "Then the healing." Sienna stared at the paperwork, at her shaking hand at the small steps between her and safety. Outside the curtain, the ER kept roaring, sirens, footsteps, voices, life refusing to pause. But inside the bay, something had shifted, something irreversible. Sienna signed her name with a trembling pen, and it felt like writing herself out of a prison. When she finished, Darius returned with a cup of water and pain meds, his hands steady as sunrise. "Drink," he said. Sienna took the cup. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them felt different now, less fear, more trust. "What happens after tonight?" she asked, voice small. Darius looked at her with a kind of seriousness that didn't lie. "After tonight," he said, "nothing gets to be the same. Not for him. Not for you." Sienna nodded, tears slipping again, not only from fear this time, but from the strange, aching relief of being believed. And when she finally stood, wrapped in a borrowed hospital sweater, escorted toward a safer exit, she glanced back once. Darius was still there, watching to make sure she made it. Not judging, protecting. And for the first time in years, Sienna walked forward without feeling like she needed permission to breathe.